what is the belief that you currently have? What is the one that you want to have? And we're doing a process to shift that. And then it becomes their job to really secure those beliefs in, because you could take on a new belief, but then go back to your old ways.
Welcome to the Live Unrestricted podcast, a show where you'll learn how to heal your relationship with food and your body so that you can focus your time and energy on more important things like your personal growth. I'm your host, Sabrina Magna, food freedom coach, and my mission is to help make your life happier and healthier without stress, overwhelm, or guilt about food. If you love the show, please do go out and share it. And if you're looking for support with your relationship with food, details about my programs are in the show notes. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's jump in. Welcome back, my friend. I am so happy that you're here because boy, do I have a treat for you today. I am really lucky and blessed to be surrounded by some incredible experts. So I am a huge believer in getting support, in getting mentorship and guidance and coaches. I've invested in coaches for years now to help me grow both personally and professionally. And in the past year, I've joined a new mastermind, which has allowed me to connect with some truly phenomenal people who are experts in their field, whether it's in the field of nervous system regulation or health or habit change. And the expert that I have for you today is an expert when it comes to mindset change, creating breakthroughs and transformations in your life. So this episode is going to be so powerful and valuable for you if you're someone who feels, the one word that I hear all the time, you feel stuck. You know that you want to change. Maybe you've been trying to change for a year, 2 years, decades. And what you'll do is you'll look at other people who have what you want and you'll ask yourself, what are they doing? Right? So you might go on Google or ask your colleagues or someone that you know, and you'll try to imitate what they're doing. But what you don't realize is that the most successful people in the world, the ones who you might look up to, who live this life of joy and of freedom and of success and abundance, yes, what they're doing matters, but that's what's happening on the surface. And what you're not seeing is the 95% of the work that they're doing that you truly cannot see. And that's what we're talking about today is what is the 95% of work and of attention and of focus that you're missing that is causing you to feel stuck, to repeat the same patterns over and over and over again to get short-term results and to fall right back to who you were before and maybe even feeling worse off than before. So I'm so excited. It was such a good conversation that I ended up having to break it up into 2 parts. So who we have today is the incredible Megan Blacksmith. She's a holistic health coach, Functional Diagnostic Nutrition Practitioner, speaker, NLP Trainer, and truly a mindset ninja. She's the co-founder of Zesty and the co-host of the Becoming Zesty podcast. And like I said before, she helps people experience massive transformation and breakthroughs in their lives, and she's here to help you do the same. So in this episode, you're going to hear us talk about the real reason that you feel stuck with food, with your habits, with your bodies, with yourself, and the things that you're missing, the things that you're not seeing, that you're not addressing. She's also going to talk about what NLP is and how it gets applied to people's lives in order to create these massive breakthroughs. We're also going to talk about the connection between your brain, your mind, your beliefs, and what happens in your body. We have a discussion about why willpower doesn't work. And one of the most interesting things that we talked about is the connection between people who are perfectionists, overachievers, who maybe grew up being really good in school, being good in their sports, and why they are more likely to struggle with food and their bodies. We're going to talk about why just doing more isn't working for you, how to tap into your intuition. And that's just part one of our conversation. So if you love part one, make sure that you stay tuned for next week where we have part two. And we're going to talk about how to experience a massive breakthrough in your life. So the way that you're looking at failure and why that's keeping you in this failure loop, what it actually means to experience a breakthrough, how to trust and connect to yourself and your intuition, quantum leaps, and so much more. So without further ado, let me play this conversation with the incredible Megan Blacksmith. Thank you so much, Megan, for being here. I am so excited to have you because we share the same mentor and we do a lot of work when it comes to changing from the inside out. And I know that this is what you really specialize in. So I would love to give you the floor. And can you tell my audience who you are and what you specialize in? What's the work that you do?
Yes, thank you for having me, Sabrina. It's always fun to have these conversations with like-minded people since, there's a lot of opinions on how to get to the health and body you want, right? So I'll give a little backstory. I was in functional medicine, hormone health, and women's brain health for about 8 years. I found that my pattern, Sabrina, has been I have some kind of chaos in my own life. So for the first one, I fell off. I like to say I fell off the hormone cliff after I had my first baby. I had great health until that point, and then after having her, I was in a deep, deep place of depression. It was kind of late postpartum though. So everyone's like, nope, it's not related to the baby. And I no longer wanted to get up and go to work. I remember thinking, maybe I could just break an arm. Like, how could I get out of work? What could I do to get some kind of leave of absence? That's how badly I wanted out. And every doctor I went to, my conventional lab work just said I was fine. I was totally fine. And I'm thinking, I know a lot of people in the world have a lot of kids. So it can't be like this for everybody because no one would have a second child if this was how it was. That was just how deep of a place I was in. And so basically, I found from that situation, I found the world of functional medicine. I found that what we eat matters, what we drink matters, what we put on our skin matters, what we think about matters, right? This world opened up to me that had not been available before. And I got better really quickly. And I was like, I can do this. So I went back to school and decided to become a health coach and functional medicine practitioner and FDN. And in this process, started helping a ton of people. And I live for transformation. So I'm loving this. And then life hit me with another little nudge. And this time it was really kind of a combo of buying a home that had mold in it and then marital struggles. My husband and I were in a really tough place. And we have openly shared all about this on our podcast. So I am an open book about this. And he's even been on our podcast to share. So
That's amazing.
Yeah. So he had an affair, and this led to me questioning everything in my world and who I am and what I do and what I think and why is my life like this. So that led me to find what I now do and what we now train in is NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. And I'll share a little bit about what that is because some people have heard of it. Some people are like, what the heck is that?
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of my audience, it's, I do a lot of this work with my clients, but when it comes to the general public, before I got into this work, I had no idea what NLP was.
Same. So what I knew I needed was support with this like last maybe 20%. I had gone a long way. I'd gotten a long way with forgiveness and understanding codependency and just really understanding like what was happening in our relationship and then what was happening in my body, because I also had access to the most amazing functional medicine practitioners and protocols and detox and sauna. And at the same time, I knew there wasn't something wasn't quite right because I was doing air quotes, all the things.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't lining up. So I did know that I was like, I know that this is emotional. I know that this event, these multiple events really had triggered a response in my body. I couldn't get safe. I couldn't feel safe. And I knew there were beliefs that were stopping me from actually moving forward. I just didn't know how to shift them.
Mm.
So NLP is the idea that one is that success leaves clues. So if you find somebody who has what you want or is doing what you want or is the identity of something you want, then we start to ask, what are they saying to themselves? What do they hear? What do they feel? What does it look like? What are their strategies? What are their habits? And when we take this set of beliefs and habits and cues, we can actually apply them in our life. That's why people like you and I have a mentor, have a business mentor, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're shortening the process. And on top of that is also the idea that we can rewire what is in our unconscious mind. So let's say from 0 to 7 years old, we are just pulling things in from the environment, and we maybe don't even have language yet to say what it is. But we hear a conversation and we're like, oh, I can tell that mom and dad are really mad about that bill that just came in. And they think those people who sent that bill are evil. And we place this little unconscious belief that money causes problems.
Mm-hmm.
Or that person who asked for money is bad, right? We're not looking at it through very we're looking at it through very young eyes, and we make a decision. And so sometimes these beliefs are passed on directly from caregivers who will tell you money is evil, child, or
Yeah.
we're picking up on it just based on what we see happening. Mom got mad when that happened, right?
Yeah.
So for protection and safety, we're learning. We're like, okay, don't do that. And so all these beliefs are going right into our unconscious mind. We're really forming those 0 to 7 years old. And then after that, we are playing those out. 95% of our day is just playing out things in the unconscious mind.
Mm.
So that's the habits, that's the strategies, that's the beliefs of really the 7-year-old you.
Yeah.
So it's like, whose beliefs were those? Probably not really thought through by you. And some of them are amazing. And some of them are now have become completely detrimental to our health and to our body. So our job is finding these beliefs. And then NLP has a variety of tools that we can actually then go rewire the subconscious mind. So I will say to the client, what is the belief that you currently have? What is the one that you want to have? And we're doing a process to shift that. And then it becomes their job to really secure those beliefs in, because you could take on a new belief, but then go back to your old ways. Mm-hmm. And we really need to secure that pathway in so it becomes the super highway. And that is the same process that I used for me personally, in my marriage, and then also in my home and in my body. So having had the mold in our home, my symptoms just were not going away, having done all the things until I got to that final layer and I discovered that there were actual beliefs present of it not being safe to heal. And also that I got a lot of help when I wasn't doing well. This was not a conscious, like, hey, I'm going to keep being sick, but people were driving my kids around, my husband's making dinner, right? There was a lot of attention. There was a lot of connection. There was a lot of love that came from being in this state. And until I really looked at where else I could get that and why I felt I needed to get that there, I didn't get better. So the cool thing is that the rewiring of the brain, I'm fully on board that we still need to support the physical body because we need all those lovely nutrients, and we do need to get some things out. There are some toxins and molds that aren't great in there. And I also feel that there's a percentage of us who get stuck because there's a layer underneath that. And the physical body is like, I'm just listening to what you're telling me. You're telling me nothing's going to work, or you're telling me we don't finish anything, or we don't deserve to look great. So I am just making your blueprint happen.
Yeah. I took so many notes while you were talking because I have like What you say is so spot on, especially when, we're talking to someone who has been dieting their entire life. And a lot of them, when they were, 7, 8 years old, they saw their mom dieting and they internalized the belief that being in a bigger body, having not the perfect body, a thigh gap, a six pack, means that there's something wrong with you. And if you didn't get it from your family, don't worry, you'll get it from the popular culture. And so if you don't have what society would deem as the quote unquote ideal body, then at a very early age, it follows you that there's something wrong with you, that you're not enough, that you're not valuable. And so you end up internalizing, and then they kind of like stack on top of one another, because then you'll start dieting in order to try to fix it, in order to try to feel worthy. And then you stack the belief that you can't stick to anything and you have no willpower and you're not disciplined. And then what hurts me the most is that then you go and you try to search for help online and you look at Dr. Google, and it all touches on what you should do, what you shouldn't do. And no one talks about the beliefs and the identities that are causing you to continue to struggle. And when you start internalize the identity of, I am someone who's never going to feel normal around food, I am someone who's always going to struggle. You could have willpower and discipline of steel. You could have someone who's whipping you around, deciding what you eat every single day, and you're going to fall back into that old identity.
I love that you just brought up the willpower part, Sabrina, because there was a pattern of people, what we would see with people we were working with. A lot of people were coming to us for hormone health. And of course, their body and weight was a big part of that. And when I first was health coaching, I was thinking, when someone would show up and they're super compliant, how some people are like, I can do anything. You tell me what to do, I'll do it, right? Like, we're only eating celery on Tuesdays? Sure, right? It's just, they'll do whatever the plan is. They want the plan though. And I was this person too, so I can just call myself out right there. The interesting thing is initially I'm like, well, this is great. They're literally willing to do anything. This is going to be so easy. And it often wasn't easy. And there was a commonality between the people who were willing to do anything and often said, you just give me the plan. And the thing was, most of us in this category were also really good at school or things like sports, where there was very specific rules and you follow them, and then you get the grade and you get the pat on the back and you get whatever it is that you get. And there was an obvious formula and it worked. And then you add the body into it, and then you add energy and emotions and all the things that go into it. And it feels like, why is this equation not working? Like all I had to do.
All the things. I'm following the rules.
Yeah. And the pattern that works in school is you just do more. Yeah. Right? Like you just study longer, you put more into that essay, you just do more. And now all of a sudden just doing more not only isn't working, it's going against everything, because now this is where people get into like over working out, completely under eating, and destroying the feedback from the brain to the hormones, and then working against it, like so much harder against it. And the more often the person was able and willing to do anything, we also realized that meant they were also able to completely overpower their own intuition and the signs from their body of like, that's actually not the best thing to, maybe right now is a resting period, or maybe right now we actually need more carbohydrates. And instead it was whatever the programmed plan was. And long-term, I know I did this too. I personally have dealt with bulimia. I've done the dieting thing. I've been through the process of what that does and then healing it. And these beliefs go deep, like really, really deep. Sabrina, there was one specific one, a woman who came to me and she wanted to shift weight and was like, I am really willing to do anything, and was doing a lot of things for her physical body. And the more we talked about it, she said, there's got to be something under this. This is just not, it's not lining up. Results and what I do, and it's just not lining up. And so the more we talked, the more we realized that she had been put on a diet from about 7 years old. And it wasn't just, physical, it was restriction of food, but it was also like the things she was being told about why she needed the restriction, and how she wasn't good enough because of this.
Yeah.
And she needed to look like the other kids. And right, like very, very damaging.
A lot of self-hatred probably happening there.
Lots, very damaging messages. And so she realized when we were talking, she said, I do actually want to release some weight right now for me. Like, I don't feel great in my body. Like, I would like to feel a little bit different. She said, but I basically cannot do that because I feel like if I were to lose this weight, then I am proving my mom right, that I actually needed to look different to be worthy. She's like, I don't want to have to look different to be accepted and worthy. And there was this battle because she really did physically want to feel different, and had never really put, of course, she knew there was all this stuff from her mom and dieting. She knew that was there, but had never quite put together that in her mind it was connected, that this would mean her mom is right. And I had another person who had figured that out about an ex-husband who had also suggested dieting.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, and it makes so much sense. And when you were talking about how you'll often find that the ones who really heavily rely on willpower, I work with a lot of perfectionists, all or nothing thinkers, overachievers, and I never really thought about the way that you put it, because I also suffered from eating disorders, and I was that girl. I was always an A+ student in high school. I was an elite synchronized swimmer, so I was training 20 hours a week, right? You just put more hours in, you do better. And I remember when I stopped the sport at 16, I had like all these internalized beliefs around my body and how it wasn't good enough. And so I really thought like I had the identity of someone who's disciplined, and my parents always told me, you're a hard worker. You're the hardest worker that we know. And so whenever I would experience the quote unquote failure, the binge, the overeating, the wanting to take a day off from exercise, it was so much more intense for me, because then it was a threat to my identity, to who I was. And I want to like wrap this up into the people who feel like they really do fall into that category. They are the overachievers. They are someone who just holds on to this identity that I'm disciplined. I should be able to fix this. And then as a result, they do disconnect from what their intuition, what their bodies, what their minds are trying to tell them. Because really, when it comes to figuring out a way, a lifestyle that's going to work for you long term, it's like a fingerprint. Every single person is going to be different. And when you're trying to follow this cookie cutter plan that someone else is giving you, you will most likely experience that resistance. And so how do you start working through these beliefs, start working through this identity so that you can trust yourself enough to listen to your intuition?
I love starting small, really testing out the trusting of the intuition. So I actually had my daughter when she was younger. I'm into trying out all sorts of things. So there was a training. There was a woman from England who was doing a training. It was called the mindfold training, where they would put blindfold over her eyes. I was there in the other room. I could watch her on the camera. And then it was the idea of her starting to get so tapped into her intuition. And essentially they're saying so she can see without seeing, right? See through a third eye. And I'm like, this is super cool. But what's interesting about it is in the beginning, So the woman would be flipping over a card, right? And she'd be like, what color is it? Or something simple, right? What shape's on it? They'd start really simple. And in the beginning, basically that, she'd say like green or blue or red. And I'm watching and it's not green or blue or red. And the woman would be like, great. And she'd go to the next one. And she did this over and over and over. And it was so interesting. She's essentially helping her connect that to trust herself in the beginning. So it's almost like in the beginning, when you're trusting your intuition, you get to just be like, whatever I did is absolutely right. And like, so if we can do the smallest thing and be like, yep, I chose. So is it right? Like right in this moment, I'm going to choose between strawberries and blueberries and then be like, yep, that was the right choice, right? How can we make it so small that we're kind of then patting ourselves on the back? And then over time, she got better and better and better at it. Because of course I'm thinking, well, like, how is she going to do this if she's literally just saying anything and you're saying correct? But it was building her confidence to actually keep building that tool and that skill, and then was honing it even more. So the beliefs are there, and I think it's starting to really look at where did these beliefs come from, and what was the story like in your home around food, or what certain bodies look like, or this has been a lot of the digging I've done recently, and some of the sayings and the things that my grandparents would say, I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
these are just would never be said right now.
Yeah.
And so you can have some compassion for the fact that like the core people you were getting love from were also got this messaging, and they want you to be successful in the world. And they have been told you won't be successful in the world unless you look a certain way or whatever it is. And so when we can start to realize that these messages that were possibly very damaging were out of love, we can start to just see, where am I tying my worth or my connection or my love to what's going on with my physical body? And then starting to just really tease that apart. Like, what does it mean about me? I mean, my husband said to me recently something, I said something about how beautiful I was. And I was having a day where I was feeling not that beautiful in my body. And he's like, well, you have to realize he's like, well, of course. He's like, I love your body. And he's like, you have to realize, like, when someone is beautiful, he's like, I'm not just talking about your physical body. And it's so interesting that when I meet somebody else and look at somebody else, I immediately just feel their energy, or I get a sense of like how excited they are. That is what matters to me. 100%. So it's funny, like the rules I put on myself or the expectations that we put on ourselves are not even what I would ever think of for someone else. And it's like, why is that just pointed at us? Why is it okay for, not just okay, but like, that's just what that person looks like. That's just the body that they're in, like the thing that's going to go away when we leave here. Right. Like, and the changes over time, I'm in my 40s now. So like it's, you can't holding on to just how it used to be and how it was. I think some people get to a certain place where they're like, oh, I can't force this anymore. Like, I do actually have to start accept myself.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with one of my clients yesterday. And what she was saying is, because we've been working on body image, and what she was saying is, I'm able to look, because we were doing some of this belief work to see, okay, where, like, let's dig deep. And the biggest belief was, I am not a success. Like, I'm a failure. I'm not worthy because I've gained weight, and people can't accept me this way. And then we started doing this work, and she was saying, there's this one woman in my life, one of my friends, and she also struggles with her body. And I always tell her how I don't love her because of the way that her body looks, and it doesn't mean anything about her. And she was saying, I can do that for other people. I can see this to be true for other people. Why can't I see this for myself? And what I was explaining to her is, it's so much easier to do it for other people because your safety is not in jeopardy when you're doing that for someone else. But when we live in a world where being in a bigger body could mean the exclusion of a social group, the exclusion of acceptance of other people's opinions, then you feel unsafe being in a bigger body. And what's interesting is that, the more you feel unsafe and the more you feel like you come from a place of like desperation. I have to change. I need to lose this weight. It's counterproductive, because then you're going to be thrown back into the thing that got you here in the first place, which is going to be dieting after dieting, which is only going to lead you to feel more unsafe in your body. So it's like this concept that self-acceptance and self-improvement are not mutually exclusive. You actually need this self-acceptance. You need this safety before you can move on to create real lasting change.
Yeah. And so the question is, like, how do we get that safety?
Okay, this conversation is to be continued in part 2 coming out next week, how to experience a massive breakthrough in your life. So we are going to talk about what it means to have a quantum leap and how you can actually create new results, a new identity, new thoughts, new beliefs, new behaviors in your life. And the reason why, the things that you're missing right now, that's not allowing you to do that. That's keeping you hitting against a wall. And before I wrap this up, I want to make sure that I give you all of the ways that you can connect with Megan, because she's incredible. So I'm going to leave all of her social links in the show notes, but you can find her on Instagram at Becoming Zesty. Her podcast is also called Becoming Zesty, and so is her website. So Becoming Zesty everywhere. I hope that you got so much value from this episode. If you did, please go on Instagram, send her a DM and tell her that you listened. Tell her what your biggest takeaways and insights were. I know she's going to love that. I'm going to love that as well. I love having my audience get to expand their world and meet new experts who are going to help you create the life of your dreams. Thank you so much for listening. I love you so much. I'll see you next week for part 2 with Megan. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you found it valuable, I would love if you would share it with someone you know that could benefit. If you're loving the show, don't forget to subscribe over on Apple Podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. I really love hearing feedback from you, so please leave a rating and review over on Apple to help us get in the ears of more people who need it the most. Finally, come hang out with me on Instagram at Sabrina Magna Health for more educational content and get up close and personal with me. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode.